I'm sure you guys have heard by now of the 3-eye Atlas comet, said to come as close as 1.8 astronomical units from Earth. And now it's right about to peek out from behind the sun and make its pass by us. And it will first be visible to us from behind the sun on October 29th, just in time for Halloween. The day historically said to be the day when the barrier between our world and the spirit world is at its weakest.
So that will be the hottest point in its journey. And we don't know what will happen. If it's a natural comet, it could, for example, disintegrate, break up, evaporate much more. So we can learn much more about it. If, on the other hand, it's technological, it will behave differently. And so we really want to watch it immediately after that. And in the first week of November, there is the JUICE spacecraft that was launched by the European Space Agency that could potentially get close to it and observe it. And then it will be closest to Earth, actually, on December 19th. So it's interesting that, October 29th, when it's closer to the sun, is near Halloween. and December 19th, it's just a week before Christmas. So the question is, will it deliver anything unusual on those holidays?
They already got a picture of it when it was further out in the solar system, but for some reason NASA won't show us the images they took when it passed by Mars. And the theories range from it being a government psyop trick to being alien tech. And they point to things like the green color and the tail switching directions, almost as if it's slowing down. But all I know is that even if it is just a regular comet, it's a bad sign, and it could tie into ancient prophecies and signs in the heavens of the times to come. In Greek mythology, we have two characters named Atlas. First, there's the Titan, the one Zeus cursed to hold up the sky, keeping it from crashing down to Earth. Brother of Prometheus and father of the Pleiades nymph sisters. And then there's Atlas, the demigod, son of Poseidon and a mortal woman. He was the king of Atlantis, in Plato's Critias and Timaeus, the place Zeus eventually decided to destroy in a single day and night, because they had mixed too much of their seed with the mortals, and had become evil and prideful and began to conquer other lands out of greed. So Zeus sent a flood and earthquakes. In almost every ancient culture, comets were seen as a bad sign from the gods. In ancient Mesopotamia, a comet, what they referred to as a great star, was linked with the death of kings, and famine, and foreign invasions. In the clay tablet Enuma Anu Enlil, it says, "If a comet appears, the king will die and a rebellion will arise in the land." In Egypt, in the coffin texts, and later writings, tailed stars were seen as omens of chaos, linked to Set, the god of disorder. They were thought to disturb the Ma'at, the divine balance in the universe. In Rome, they believed something similar. They saw them as a sign of change, which brought about times of famine, war, and death of leaders. Pliny the Elder wrote in his work Natural History, "Comets are among the stars that cause terror and fear. They appear rarely and portend great changes in the world." In ancient China, comets were called broom stars, said to sweep away dynasties. They were considered a manifestation of heaven's anger at those in power on earth. Same thing in India. And the same thing in Mesoamerica. There's the story of Montezuma seeing a comet that lasted an entire year, that he and the Aztec shamans interpreted as a sign of their fall. About 9 or 10 years later, Cortez and the Spanish conquistadors arrived. But this time the comet coincides with Halloween, the Day of the Dead, and several prophecies from ancient myth. Halloween as we know it today originates from All Hallows' Eve, the vigil for the Christian saints held the day before All Saints' Day, and then All Souls' Day the day after that. But this type of celebration of the dead at this same time of year was done by a number of ancient cultures as well, and all of them had two things in common. It was a day to honor fallen ancestors and past spirits, and it was believed this specific time of year was when the spirit world and ours could interact. We find this tradition in Europe around the Celts, the Scandinavians, Germanics, Slavs, and others. It can be found in Egypt and West Africa, across the Fertile Crescent, and in the Far East in China and Japan, and even as far as the Americas. Some of the North American tribes like the Cherokee and the Creek had late autumn ceremonies to honor ancestors and cleanse bad spirits. And then of course the Aztec had their festival for the dead on November 1st and 2nd, what is now today's Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. But a lot of these cultures also had another belief coinciding with this exact time of year between Halloween and the winter solstice, December 21st, which fits in perfectly with 3i Atlas's timeline, which will be closest to Earth on December 19th. This belief I'm talking about is the Wild Hunt. It's most well known and detailed in Norse and Germanic myth, where Woden or Odin could be seen traveling across the sky, riding his 8-legged horse, collecting unworthy souls of the dead, or even snatching up living men who committed evil crimes. There were even stories of some living men returning after being taken by the Wild Hunt, and they reported missing time. Even years had passed in some cases. He was said to come with a stampede of souls, and his wolves can be heard barking. They say around this time of year, people would be scared to look up at the night sky, especially on windy and stormy nights. And the souls they snatched up were doomed to forever ride with the hunt. Some warn that anybody caught in their path could be swept away as well, and also doomed to ride with them for eternity. The Celts had their own version of this, the Hounds of the Otherworld, that would similarly run across the sky hunting down the souls of the damned, dragging them down to the underworld. In Slavic beliefs, they had the Wild Chase. Spirits of justice would travel through the frozen forest, taking the lives of the evildoers and witches. In Japan, they had the Night Parade of 100 Demons, where demons and spirits would roam the streets on a specific night of year, usually midsummer or the end of summer. And if they saw you, they would take you away with them. And then even as far as Hawaii, they had the story of the night marches, where the spirit of a group of warriors would invade the towns, blasting conch shells and drums, and anyone caught outside their homes would be doomed. Randall Carlson has this theory that the reason for all these death festivals and hunt traditions is because this was the time of year that the cataclysm that caused the Younger Dryas took place. That the asteroid struck or the solar flare went off or whatever happened that caused the Younger Dryas Ice Age period, where hundreds of species went extinct and man's population was reduced by 90% in some of the most affected areas, like North America and Europe, happened on the day that all these cultures now call the Day of the Dead or the Day of Souls. The day when the gods come and reap their harvest of evildoers and damned souls. Listen to what he says here.
On Halloween, when the Festival of the Dead commenced, the spirits of the dead wander more than at any other time of the year. This is a night when devils, witches, and other mischief-making beings are all abroad on their baleful midnight errands. So we have this idea that there's one night a year that the souls of the departed can come back to the earth and interact with the living. What we're going to find out, though, is that ancient peoples did in fact see something very real flying in the sky at midnight on Halloween. Here's a partial list of ancient cultures that observe the Festival of the Dead in either late October or early November. As you go down the list, you can see there's the Judeo-Christian, the Celtic Druidical, the Anglo-Saxons, Dutch and Swedes, in Egypt, Assyria, Persia, Peru, Polynesia, Mexico, India, the Mayans, the Australians, and the Japanese. In the most ancient calendar in India, the year commenced in the month of November, which bears the name Kartugui. That is, the Pleiades, a constellation which must, by its rising or setting at that time, once have regulated the primitive year. In fact, the Pleiades forms what is usually given to be the shoulder of the bull, right? This is Taurus, the bull. Now, each year, Pleiades rises in the summer after sunset, and rises and gets higher in the sky until late October, early November. If you go outside at midnight and face due south, you will see the Pleiades crossing the local meridian. That is the line that reaches from the zenith to the point due south. That imaginary line will be the culmination of the grand arch, the royal arch, the celestial arch that is the plane of the ecliptic with all the zodiacal signs, and you will see the bull will be at the keystone of that arch. And at midnight, the shoulder of the bull, marked by the Pleiades, will occupy that position in the sky. Now, ancient peoples all over the world would have seen this same astronomical phenomena at the same time, whether or not they were in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. And it is this idea of the end of the world that's at the basis or at the core of Halloween. The deluge occurred very close to early November. And so even in the Judeo-Christian tradition, we find this story about the end of the world falling very close to this date that's universally associated with the end of the world, but we now find is also associated with an astronomical phenomena, the planet crossing the Taurid meteor stream. But all of these ideas are wrapped up and contained and preserved within the celebration of Halloween. We see that in some of the depictions of comets, they actually have the appearance of a broom passing over the land, igniting fires, triggering great storms, destructions, sweeping away the old. Here we see Comet West, which would be an impressive broom star. We can see how ancient peoples would look in the sky, see comets like this, and be looking for earthly images to help them understand what they were looking at. And so they came up with swords and sickles and long-haired ladies and brooms, amongst other things. And here we see a very witch-like cometary apparition destroying the earth. This is from the 19th century. The long hair on fire, the witch-like countenance of the comet. Interestingly, the word apparition, which is used to describe the appearance of a comet, is also the word we use to describe the appearance of a ghostly, otherworldly, supernatural entity. That's no coincidence that same word is used for both of these entities. And now you can begin, I hope, to begin to see that there is hidden symbolism in the witch flying on her broom through the night sky.
And then, of course, we have the prophecies of the falling stars from heaven in Revelation. But other cultures say the same thing. This is one of the signs of Ragnarok in the Scandinavian. In Greek, this is a part of the Cataclysmos, at the end of the cosmic cycle. And in the Maya, there's a heavenly upheaval at the end of the long count cycle. The Bible says this in the book of Luke chapter 25. There will be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. So we'll see, I guess, what this 3-eye Atlas comet really is. Maybe it is just a normal interstellar comet. Or maybe it's alien tech, or a sign from the divine. There was actually also another comet that came close to us back in 2015 that was shaped like a skull, and it arrived on October 29th. It's almost as if someone's sending us a message. There's one more thing I have to tell you though. There's a lot of evil rituals and witchcraft that happens this time of year. And with this comet being present, I'm sure all these wannabe witches and magicians will see it as something to give them power. This is real stuff not to take lightly. Just something to be aware of. Especially if you're out in the woods or anything like that. It's way more common than you think, and it can lead to dangerous situations if you run into these people. And who knows what kind of evil they're conjuring up or communicating with. This has actually happened to me once, where I was out camping with a friend and we came across a campsite with a pentagram made of quartz stones, and a book of spells left behind in an open box. We just turned around and left. Not smart to mess around with that shit. Check out the rest of this clip. This is an astrophysicist talking about this, you guys. Watch this.
Thanks for having me. It's just the third object that we spotted from outside the solar system, and we already know that it's 1,000 to 1,000,000 times more massive than the previous two that we discovered over the past 8 years. So that makes it quite rare. And the question is, why would the third object be so massive relative to the previous ones? But moreover, its trajectory is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun, the so-called ecliptic plane. And the chance of that happening at random is 1 in 500. So the question arises as to whether its trajectory was designed by some intelligence. And it's coming very close to several planets, including Mars, on October 2nd, and then Jupiter on March 16th, 2026. So the question is it planning to not only probe these planets, but perhaps even release probes that will visit the Earth, or maybe it will maneuver when it comes closest to the sun on October 29th? And I should say that it has many other anomalies. There was a glow during July and August that was extended towards the sun rather than away from the sun, the way we find the comets doing. And moreover, it has a lot of nickel around in the gas plume around it without much iron, which is a feature of industrially produced nickel alloys. And the high-rise camera on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter took the very sharpest image of it with 30 kilometers resolution per pixel. And we really want to see that image. However, the claim is that because of the government shutdown, we are not able to see it. And it's already 3 weeks since the image was taken.
All right, thank you guys for watching this one. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And keep an eye on that 3i Atlas comet. We don't know what could happen with that. I'll try to post updates on X if I see any, so go follow me there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.